This video is brought to you by none other than Hire Heroes, you guys. Hire Heroes is your one-stop shop when it comes to virtual staffing and making sure that you have qualified talent with your business. One thing that I love about Hire Heroes, you guys, is they've actually gone through the process already of vetting and making sure that your staff member is well trained to best fit your needs. Whether you need help with social media work, posting things on your accounts, responding to people that send messages to your social media accounts, whether you need help with data entry or a multitude of other things that they're qualified to do, Hire Heroes has got you covered. If you're having trouble finding quality talent and number two, affording to be able to run payroll for that talent, Hire Heroes has got you covered with an affordable alternative to have a virtual assistant working for your business. There's a link down in the description of this video to where you can learn more about getting your own VA through Hire Heroes. I certainly recommend it. They're what we use in our business for all of our virtual assistant needs, and you will want to make sure that you check them out today. Hey, what's up, guys? Christian Brindle here, and we are back with another video. I love bringing you guys people that are doing humongous things in our space, and I have somebody here that really I feel disappointed in myself that we haven't had her on more over the past couple of years. I have Becky Rill up in York, Pennsylvania, and Becky is building herself a tremendously impactful and fast-growing agency. Her and her husband Keith have done an amazing job just kind of laying the groundwork. And I wanted to kind of spend some time and kind of pick her brain and extract some information for you guys about some things that she's doing, but in addition to that, just some overall general consensus advice for what you guys need to do to really grow in 2023. So Becky, how are you doing today?
I am fantastic.
Good deal.
I thought we're good.
Yes.
Ready for true spring though here in Pennsylvania.
Yes. Yeah, it's, they told me last week, they're like, it's the first day of spring. I'm like, it could have fooled me because it's like right today, it's snowing. It's a snowstorm outside right now here. So it seems like, we have maybe a couple of weeks of true spring and then it gets summer because it's snowing so much during the spring. But so Becky, you have built a business in a very short amount of time that you guys are incredibly close to breaking your 1,000 client mark, which is phenomenal. You've been licensed for 3 years only. I wanted to kind of give you a second here to kind of give the audience a little bit of an introduction. How did you get started in the business and what got you to this point up until now?
Okay, sounds great. And yes, it has been 3 years ago. Literally this week, I wrote my first app.
Wow.
So, it is officially, and 3 years ago this week, we were in the middle of COVID lockdown. So that was but yeah, I previous to this, I was a former public educator. And then when I had kids who are now 16 and 14, which is crazy, I did more work from home and direct sales. And I was with a company. I was there from pretty much the startup. It was a newer company. Joined that, and they were going under. And I knew I wanted at that point, I didn't really want to do sales with a product and a credit card at the end. I wanted to get back into service, but knew I didn't want to teach anymore in this. I've been there. It was a great 10-year run in public ed. But so yeah, I actually put out on Facebook a listing because I was successful in the direct sales space for many years. And so I kind of have what I call the sharks coming out of every company.
Yeah.
So I put the video out on Facebook for twofold saying, thank you, but you don't need to reach out to me. I'm not doing direct sales anymore. That's a past time in life. But also here's what I am looking for. So if any of this makes sense and you think that there's a career that matches up, let me know. And I put out there that I wanted to be able to teach, but not necessarily children. I wanted to be able to be of service to a group that really needed some sort of help. I wanted to be able, if there's an opportunity to speak about what I do. I thought at one point about going into professional speaking. That was something that many had encouraged me to do, but it still just didn't feel totally right. So I went through this list. And at the end, my aunt who lives in California, was same day, she's like, oh my gosh, you got to talk to my friend about Medicare. And I'm like, insurance? Like, did you listen to any? She's like, yes, I did. You got to check this out. So several phone calls went by and I thought, why not? I'll give it a shot. Like, everything's sounding like my list of 9 non-negotiables. So that's how I got into it. I started that second, third week of January, and 2 months later, I had done all the studying, testing, licensing, and I was starting to write apps, which was also in the start of COVID.
Yes.
So I got into it. Yeah.
I remember that time very vividly, right? Because around that time, I think that was right when Six Figure Medicare Agent started up. And it was a very small, intimate community at that time, right? Wasn't what it is today. It was 400, 500, 600 people probably in the group. And it was really close knit. You know, you were one of the first people that was like in the group. You were one of like the early people. And I remember that time. It was a very interesting year.
It sure was. And I've said this to you before, but was so thankful that you had that at the time, because my upline, and I knew nothing. I didn't know what independent versus captive meant. I had no idea. I started as an independent and I didn't even really know what that meant in the space, because I was so new. And my mentor at the time was out of Colorado, had been doing this a long time, wonderful woman. But when COVID hit, I mean, the way she did business, it was like, I'm not really sure what we're supposed to do. You know, it just kind of shocked, being that she was already in her 60s, her personal age. So it was a time when I said, okay, I need a full-time job. And if I don't know what I'm doing, I need to spend like 40 hours a week, literally training. How do I do this? Because I'm locked down at home. And so it was one of those things. I was going into Facebook groups and finding anybody that said, hey, I'm doing a little talk when I jump on it. And that's when I found the Six Figure University. And I started, I don't remember exactly when I actually got into the university part of it, but I spent that spring and into summer, like every day going through that entire university. And a lot of it was self-teaching, and then figuring out, okay, well, Christian says this. Now, how can I adapt that to here in Pennsylvania when we're, so distant from one another? And it was a lifesaver for me to really help me launch the business at a crazy time.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think, and I think I've told you this in the past, but like my viewpoint on it is, there's a lot of people that get that training and go through it. There's not a lot of them that are able to take it and use it as a piece anyway of turning it into the results that you have. So it's all you. I mean, you are, you just have incredible work ethic and talent at what you do. So, I mean, props to you. I mean, you've done such a great job with it. And I'm sure there's plenty of things you've learned along the way from other sources that have kind of just accumulated all into kind of like a melting pot. But so COVID happens, right? You find the group, you start kind of getting plugged in the group, you get into the university. What is the point that gets you to where you're like, oh, I'm crushing it, like how long until you get to this point where you're just cruising, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot, I have 200 clients, I have 300 clients. How does that kind of transition?
Yeah, great question. I would say 1 year in, because the first year, like my first month, I wrote 2 apps, and then the next month, still in lockdown, I wrote 3. And I really didn't know how to do this business. So I was like, well, I guess I get licensed in a whole bunch of states. So I did that. And then I reached out to different insurance broker managers, because I had heard that's what you do. Like, they'll help you. And a broker manager said, hey, here's a list. And he literally called them closed, lost, dead leads. He's like, He's like, and then when you write a couple apps, I'll give you 50 more. And I was like, oh, okay, great. I'll do that. So, yeah, I have crazy stories I won't go into now with those first ones, but I called him back after the 50 and I'm like, okay, I wrote 2. And he's like, you what? I said, I wrote 2 apps. He's like, you're kidding me. Like, that's incredible. I'm like, well, you told me write apps, and because I didn't know the difference. So then I wrote 3 off of the next list. And at that point, I thought I was killing it. So, 5 in. But then from there, it was like, okay, well, what other means do I have? So I started to learn about different ways to market myself from home. And then when the community opened up a little bit, AEP happened the end of that year, still in the first year. And if I remember correctly, I think I wrote 40 and I was super happy. And then it started to pick up and I started to get referrals. And when I hit that 1 year mark, that it exploded. It exploded. I feel like I found my lane. I found the way I really wanted to do business after like months of kind of just trial and error. I saw where I was getting traction. And then from there, so that would have been what, March of 2021. It's just been like taken off. Yeah. So I would say the 1 year mark it took till I finally was, and I wasn't even totally comfortable then, you know, we're 100% comfortable. Everybody's different, but that is really when I was like, whoa, like I'm pretty successful here. I have, written 100 in my first year, and then it just took off.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, I feel like one thing that you did, just from my perception, right, from getting the opportunity to work with you and Keith and, having those conversations, but also from the outside looking in a little bit. I feel like one thing that you did incredibly well is you were able to get to a point in your business where the prospects and the prospective customers, they're chasing you and you're not chasing them. And I always tell agents, like, that should be the long-term goal. You should have a business that you build to the point where between your brand, between your reputation from your existing clients, between your connections, referral partners, maybe it's marketing, whatever it is, a combination of all this stuff. You should be so busy because people are seeking you out, right? And I always tell agents, like, you buy leads early on, or maybe you buy them as fillers, like when things are slow, whatever the case might be, but they're a means to an end, right? And you did that probably as you got to that point where probably as fast as anybody that I can think of. And so one thing I wanted to kind of talk about a little bit is talk about how you guys were able to build a business to where you just have so many people coming to you guys and calling and kind of falling into your laps that it really, I mean, you guys probably are even having a difficult time keeping up with the demand. What are some steps that you took to get there? Like, what did you do that was different from other agents?
Yes. So like I said a little earlier, I cast this huge net, and I really quickly realized in everything I had done from public ed teaching and then direct sales, and then intentionally over a couple years before I got into Medicare, intentionally building my brand, and my brand being Becky Rill. I spent an entire year, and I invested a little bit of money on like, how do I build up my own brand? And it's not that I'm selling something. When I say my brand, it's who am I? What do I stand for? What do I want to be known for? So I just made that decision that I wanted to be the go-to person in my community for literally anything. I love to connect people. And so everything I did in my social media presence was showing that I'm super involved in the schools and the community and giving back, and my network grew and grew, so that I was already, prior to Medicare, getting calls with people saying, hey, I need a plumber. Do you know who to call? Hey, my child needs a tutor. Who could I call? So I built my personal brand before I tried to just go out there and sell myself as a Medicare agent.
Yeah.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Year one, I'm like, why am I going all over the place when I've done the research, I know in my community, about 350 people every month age in, turn 65. We're surrounded by other counties. So I brought that in and really worked on, okay, now I'm gonna focus on kind of being the rock star in my own backyard rather than trying to go so wide. I wanted to go narrow and really deep. So that's where I put my time. So it was just building a personal brand. And then how I did it is I got out there and I got involved in the community. A lot of things that I didn't have to pay for, just sort of networking things. Business things would pop up, just women's group things would pop up, and just to say, hey, yep, I'm still here and this is what I'm doing. So as I started to build the Medicare side of things, and then it was a random, one of those tidbits you just get random on a phone call. It was with another broker manager who had said, oh, what are you doing for leads? And I'm like, what do you mean, what am I doing for leads? What kind of leads are you buying? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking. What do you buy? What do you mean buying? Like buying people? So I didn't have a clue. She told me, she's like, go to this website and just check it out. And at that time I had from a previous business, I was using those auto ship of cards, putting a drip campaign out there. So I went out there and she's like, yeah, buy them. They're 10 cents. And I was like, well, 10 cents, that's pretty good. That's what I started with before the end of year one. That's what we're doing today. And we're still doing it. I used to send a whole lot of postcards. Now I don't. Now I just want every person in my county, those 350 people a month, to know that Keith and I are here. And so literally we pay a little less. We pay 8 cents now for each of our leads. And we mail out a series of 3 postcards that I say we customize. I'm not tech savvy, but I made it a pretty background with like a color. Put my picture, now it's both of our pictures, and just saying, hey, you're turning 65. Hello, neighbor. We're here. We're in your backyard. And we just want to help. And we want to reduce your stress, give you peace of mind. And we just started sending these cards out. And it's still, that is what we pay for in our business, which a lot of people are like, oh, you must invest in that. I'm like, well, it's less than $1,000 a month. And between that and now referrals, we're writing like 30 a month. So not a big investment. I write 2 new people, I've already turned a profit. So it's really networking, getting out there, and then building that system, which again, doesn't have to be expensive to get, some of the leads to get connected wherever it is you want to do business, which for me was right here in York County.
Yeah, I think your model is something that is what I think every agent should strive to do, right? Like, I think agents get so bogged down in so many different things. Like they're trying to recruit, and it's like, well, you have 70 clients. Maybe you should write more first, you're trying to buy every kind of lead under the sun, which, don't get me wrong, I'm an advocate for buying leads when you need them. But the long-term goal should be to build the kind of traffic that you and Keith have been able to develop. So with you guys approaching essentially 1,000 clients, right? Very close, probably hit it in a month or so, right? Doing that in such a short time, in around 3 years or so. If an agent came to you today and they said, Becky, my goal, I just got my license, I'm brand new, I want to have 1,000 clients that I write, I don't have any interest in recruiting or anything like that, what would be some tips that you'd give them on that would help them get there?
Yes. The first thing I would say is start writing business. And I was told that too. And I was like, yeah, but I don't know enough. Nope. You are never going to know everything. And people appreciate when you say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but I promise to get back to you. And then you do. So, and when you are licensed and you've got your contract, get out there and start writing business, whether you're showing up at the local senior fairs, you're, going to a senior center and getting to call bingo, however, and then you get some contact that way, posting out on social media, whatever the case may be. For those who can pay, I'm telling you, I've never, maybe once I did, it didn't work out for me. I've never paid more than 10 cents a lead. It doesn't have to be expensive, but you do have to invest a little bit into it to get something out of it, because you've got to get your name out there. And for me, it doesn't have to be a big postcard. It just needs to look a little different than all the other, flyers. We don't call, which I know a lot of it's illegal, but even email anybody. Literally, our cards have our name, our email, our phone number, and our web address, so they can go check us out. And now we have a link on there that you can click to schedule an appointment. Everyone comes to us. We do not go out and search for anyone. And I think anyone can do what we're doing right off the bat. Even if you send out 100 postcards, you might only get 1 or 2 calls. Hey, it's practice. Get out there and practice the conversation, because the more you have the conversations, the more successful you're going to be. Right? Just your practice. Takes lots of no's to get to a yes, but if you're having more conversations, you're getting a lot more no's, which means you're that much closer to the yeses. And it starts to happen.
And that's great advice. That was something that early on in my career, someone had said to me, and it was something that I really didn't get at first. But once I did it, I think it was a transformative thing in my business, and I think what you said at the beginning was so powerful. And I hope everybody that's watching this really kind of heard and understood what Becky said there. Just get started, right? Like there's so many agents that we work with that they are so petrified to make a call or to get out and have a conversation with somebody. Or, there was someone I talked to the other day. They were invited to do a presentation for a senior center of 30 people, around 30 people. And they were thinking about canceling it because they felt like they weren't ready. And I'm like, I don't care if you're ready. Like, you do it badly, it's better than not doing it at all.
And they don't know.
Yes.
Because they don't know they have no idea. They're scared to death. They've been scared by all the commercials, flyers, hearing from the neighbor, we're going to get penalties. That any information you give them, they're thankful for. Yeah. And when you're just starting out, again, you don't have to know it all, but you know a heck of a lot more than that person you're talking to. I guarantee it.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Even if you just have your license and you just got your license, to pass that license test, infinitely more than your client does.
Absolutely.
I think that's great advice. Can you share a little bit about, because one thing I think, with your success in direct sales prior to being in insurance, you've always been a really great networker, right? Mm-hmm. And that's paid great dividends for you in insurance, but before insurance too. What are some things you do to kind of build those networking relationships? Are there any tips that you can share on that?
You bet. I've done trainings on how do you appropriately network. Thing. If you're going to a meeting, right, that you want to be one of the very first people in the room, and you want to be one of the very last people to leave. So if you're buzzing in, having lunch, buzzing out, you're not getting anything out of it. Yeah. So I always want to be one of the very first people standing there. So people come in, I'm like, hi, and I don't talk about my business. It's, hi, I'm Becky. Like, are you, this is your first time here? Oh my gosh, I've seen you. Like, how have you been? Just to start to build, to me, it's all about relationships, because people do business with who they know, like, and trust. Mm-hmm. And I would never hand my business card to anyone, even in a business networking, until I've had some sort of connection. So that's first. The other thing is, if you're walking in and there's already groups formed, this may seem very, very simple, but it works. Find an odd group. 1, a group of 3, a group of 5, because that means somebody's not talking. So even if you're 3, right, 2 people can only be talking, and then there's this person, so you can immediately move in and start a conversation. And I told that, and people are like, oh my gosh, that really works. Like, I always, who's the kind of the odd person. The other thing with networking, whether it's through a true networking or just you're connecting, however you choose to connect, social media, is take the time, invest the time to get together with somebody with 0, and I mean 0, thoughts of doing business with them. that all you're doing is you want to get to know them. Because I guarantee if you take the time to get to know them at some point in the conversation, and sometimes it doesn't happen, but usually they say, well, tell me about you. And then talk about yourself. And again, not necessarily your business. When I, right before I started Medicare and I was starting a brand new business, I took on a challenge to meet with 100 people in 90 days with zero could talk about business unless they asked me. And I did that. And I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to commit. Yep. It was more than one person to write. Sometimes I did 3 or 4, then I went doing for 2 days. I will tell you what, at that point, my business exploded to the point I was the #1 sales, recruiter, and leader developer in the country.
Wow.
Because
Wow.
that time. And those people referred me and referred me and referred. Oh my gosh, you got to meet this person. And all of a sudden I was getting in with some really influential people that really helped my business. That was not it was my intention in the back of my head, but I think too quick to want to get in and get that quick sale. Well, I just asked Keith this morning because I wanted to make sure I wasn't lying. In our last 2 years, our retention rate is 100%.
Wow.
We have not lost one person. My first year, I lost a couple. Again, I didn't know what I was doing and they got wooed by the ads. We haven't lost a single person. And I'm super proud of that. And it is because when we focus on the turning 65, because we really feel like be the first ones to educate. And we always tell everybody we're about education, and building that relationship, that trust. They call us and they call us all the time. And yep, that can be a downfall of the business because our phone rings all the time. But they totally trust us. So any TV commercial, any flyer, any phone call they get, the neighbor said, they're like, can you confirm this or deny that or tell us how this works? Once we've got them, we've got them. And that's huge. We aren't having to, we do put a lot of time into retention, but it pays us.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's like, there's so many agents out there and agencies in the country that they're so caught up with client acquisition, which is vitally important. Don't get me wrong, but there is nothing put into retention, and they almost have this revolving door like business. There was a guy I talked to in Florida pretty recently, and he comes to mind. I've been bringing him up a lot because I've been thinking about him a lot, because I think there's a lot more people like him, but maybe, they just don't talk about it publicly, right? But his whole business was built off of the DSNP market. Like that was what he targeted. He has 90% DSNP market, and he has a 60% retention rate. And so what I told him is I said, I'm like, this is the problem you're having. I'm like, 2 people come in, 1 walks out all the time. I'm like, you have a revolving door business, and it doesn't matter how many you acquire if you can't keep anybody. We look at these like massive call centers, right? We look at the Go Healths and the Select Quotes and all these companies. If you look at their public information, they have 40-50% retention rates. Like they just lose them like crazy. And it's caused their stocks to be in the toilet, And so retention isn't talked about enough. And it's not about how many clients you acquire if you can't keep any. I think that's incredible that you guys have been able to not have any losses in the last couple of years.
Well, and here's a thought piggybacking on what you just said. I think the insurance companies are also focused more on acquisition rather than, retention. So yes. I had an idea again, after being in a meeting with something else. I was like, hey, we have a regional carrier that we write probably 80% of our MAPDs through. And so I was thinking, this last AEP, they weren't sure about marketing dollars. And then I said, are there higher producers than me in the area? Well, no. I was like, then let's give a little back. I still use that for the acquisition. I've already approached them because I said, I have an idea, and this is normal the way my brain works. It's out of the box. And here's my idea. Instead of, you random parts of the counties that you're in, going out and just setting up in a hotel and sending out a whole bunch of flyers, which they haven't even done in the last couple of years because they're like, we don't get a good turnout. I said, why not invest in my husband and I, and let's do that, get a hotel or whatever, where we're only inviting our clients who are already members, right? Because we have like 600 people with them now. And and maybe we can take it to the next step. It's only for them and their friends. So we're getting the acquisition, but we're also doing a retention of, hey, here's the insurance company that says we're all about you, we're local. And you call the customer service, you're calling someone in Pennsylvania or West Virginia, and now here's the people that are actually like taking some of your calls, to build that relationship, to really work on retention, because we worked our butts off for retention.
Yeah.
And now, hey, carriers, like, you need to have a little skin in the game too. And they're like, we've never thought of that. Like, maybe we should think about that. I'm like, right. And they all live within a 45-minute drive of right here.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's get them like some good food and drinks and bring them in, and and just work to thank them and retain them and make sure they're crystal clear for going into 2024.
I think that's incredibly underrated, and I think that's so smart. I think more carriers should have that focus. Carriers are funny, and I understand, they answer to somebody who answers to somebody who answers to somebody who answers to stockholders somewhere, right? Their world is so different than ours, but I think if more of them kind of took that approach and were open to that kind of thing, it might have a tremendous impact, on their bottom lines.
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
So I want to respect your time, Becky. I could stay on here with you for another 2 hours, and we wouldn't run out of stuff to talk about. But I know you have better things to do today than talk to me all day. Last thing I wanted to talk about. So you're going to be in Salt Lake City this June, and you're going to be one of our stage presenters at the summit. Talk a little bit about what you have in mind for that, if you know, and talk about just the event as a whole and kind of what the experience looks like last year.
Okay, perfect. So last year, I'll start there. Last year's event was my first time there. It was only my second Medicare conference that I had attended. And I went in hopes of, I wanted like the meat and potatoes. I was all in because I wanted to learn things. That's why I figured I'm investing my time and my money to be here, and I got it big time. So when you asked me if I would speak this next year, I jumped on it instantly. I'm like, yes, I would love to. I love to speak. But I was thinking one thing that, and we talked about this a little bit earlier, one thing I wish I had was a little bit more on like the individual guy or woman,
Yes.
or very small. There's just a couple of you. So I did the business the first 2 years by myself, because we had grown so big so fast. My husband actually left his corporate job of 29 years and joined me in the business. He's loving it. Now we brought my sister-in-law in because we need people, or a person, answering the phones and doing the general questions. Although she just got licensed this week, so she might be, getting more involved too. But I really want my talk to focus on those who are independent, or you're curious about becoming, you've been captive and want to be an independent agent, and how you don't have to build a team if you don't want to, and how you can be really successful and do this all by yourself. Or you get to the point where you just need an assistant, which is a great place. I was thrilled when I got to that. So I don't answer my phones anymore. It was probably the only part of this that I'm like, oh, I don't want to answer another phone call, right? So I'm going to be focusing on that. I'm going to bring in, and I was fortunate. I'm very lucky. My husband was in IT for all those years, decades. I had started and I paid for it, and it was well worth it. Of the whole idea of automating, being a one-woman show, And then he's kind of taken that to the next level for us. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the focus of finding your lane instead of like, if being a national representative and finding those markets you want to hit, or are you really about being, in your backyard and then finding your lane and how do you build it and how do you go and just grow?
I love it. I love it. And, when we talked about that a little earlier, and one thing I told you was, I feel like that is so necessary and so needed. I think we had so much positive feedback from the event last year, and I think it was a great first year, but I felt like if there was a hole, it was sometimes when there's, heads of FMOs and heads of marketing companies and heads of call centers, people that have sold call centers, it can sometimes be a little hard to relate, for the person that's trying to thrive as a 1 or 2 or 3 person operation, and I think what you're bringing is so needed for the industry right now. And that's why I asked you. I feel like it's a desperate need, I think, for agents to kind of hear a voice like yours. And so we're really excited to have you and Keith back, and we're so excited to have you take the stage, and it's going to be great. So we appreciate you guys for investing your time and coming down.
We are excited. We loved Utah last summer. We can't wait to get back there. So, and excited to see we've heard lots of buzz, people coming back that were there last year. So new friends and so now they're old friends, and to meet new ones, and just the connections that you make at a conference like this, where it's not humongous. It really is intimate. And you really, there's people throughout this year I've continued to keep conversations going with and bounce ideas off of. And it's, because we connected at the summit, and it can really be just that in itself. Just getting a couple of those little tidbits, if you take them back and implement them, can be huge for your business. Definitely encourage everyone to come, because it is well worth your investment.
Well, Becky, how can people find you if they wanted to connect with you? Where's a good place for people to find Becky?
Yeah, so I am, my social media is Facebook. You may see me other places. I don't really do anything with it. So Facebook, it's Becky, and then my maiden name, McCloskey, which is MCCLOSKEY. Rill. Can always send me a private message. A lot of people have reached out to me that way through the Six Figure group. And then you can always email. This is a long email, but it's Rill at your-medicare-solutions.net. So those are probably the two quickest, easiest. And then if we want to start texting or whatever, I'll shoot you my number. But yeah, feel free to reach out. I've done a lot with when I talk to you or I post something and people are like, wait, tell me how that system goes. I am always happy to share. People always say, I feel like I'm stealing. I'm like, nope, we all go up together. So please don't advertise in York County. That's all I ask. Whatever I have, you can take, I tell people you can take what I have, take my name off and put yours on if it speaks to you, and send it. So I'm always happy to ship. There's nothing, I don't hold anything back. So
well, I mean, I think you're a real, treasure in the industry right now because of that giving mentality that you have. And it's very, very generous of you, because most people, our industry is so much smoke and mirrors, keep things behind curtains and things like that. So it's always refreshing when somebody is willing to help agents. And that's what I try to do too, so it's a rising tide lifts all boats kind of mentality, right?
Right.
Becky, thank you for your time. This was great as always. I know we'll do it again soon, and we're excited to see you and Keith in Salt Lake.
Wait,
guys, if you enjoyed this video, drop a like on the video. It helps more people find videos like this that need this information. Comment your thoughts down below. Make sure to subscribe, and make sure you're following Becky, if nothing else. She's a rock star. She's a superstar, and she's doing big things. So
We will see you next time, guys, and make sure to tune in for more videos. And we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks.